if you're thinking about building a second brain or just doing research in the area in general, you should stop and ask yourself one simple question. Have I read the book? I just read Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte about a couple of days ago, and a lot of aspects of it jumped out to me because the book came out before everybody and their dog on the internet decided to start making YouTube videos and other content about it. So there's a lot of things in that book that aren't very aesthetically pleasing, and therefore you don't see a lot online. But there was one nugget of truth, one idea that was so surprising to me that nobody that I had at least encountered had discussed, that I wanted to make a video about it, and that's why we're here. These are the 3 steps that I use and that I would strongly recommend you use to design a second brain. And primarily the middle step, but all of the steps in general, are based off of that idea by Tiago Forte. So let's get into them. Step 1 is to know the battlefield. You need to know what you're looking for and know what's out there. What does this look like? You're going to be using your second brain, but no second brain is similar to another second brain. They're all different because they're all being used by different people in the way that those people need. So if I'm going to be doing field research out where there's no Wi-Fi on my laptop, and you're going to be, spending a lot of time meditating in church, and somebody else is going to be sitting in a classroom, we're all going to need different things. Mine needs to be able to work offline because I'm out somewhere with no internet. You probably want to bring a notebook or something in there because you probably don't want a bunch of technology in that church. And the student probably doesn't care as long as he can just take notes quickly and then review them easily, and probably have some sharing capacity as well. What you want to do is define the goal of your second brain. Know at least what you might want to be using it for. It doesn't have to be glorious. It doesn't have to be anything more than, I want to organize my information, or I want to be able to process new thoughts from things I read. Getting an idea will help you define some criteria or requirements for your system, and knowing those requirements, or knowing what you need your system to be able to do, will help you when you actually go and do research. This is the other half of step 1. At this point, you know what you're looking for. You should have some form of list or checklist of, okay, it needs to fulfill all of these criteria. Now you need to go out there and look for tools that actually do. Try to find things that are offline, but also have sharing capacity, but also do the other things you need them to do. You know what you need. Now you're looking for things that match up with that. It's really important to figure out what you need first, because otherwise you're going to be distracted by shiny new tools, and you're going to try to want to make it work for your situation. Being adaptable is good, but there's no reason you should compromise on what you need just because you might want something else. So knowing what you need first will help you weed out the things that look cool but won't actually work for you in the future. That leads us on to step 2, which is where Tiago Forte's idea really comes into play. Step 2, positioning the troops. This comes from the idea that almost nobody talks about, that your second brain is a system, not a tool. Almost every video is going to try to convince you, man, if you only used Obsidian, all of your problems would go away. If you only used OneNote, or if you only used Notion or Evernote, nobody's talking about Evernote anymore, but if you only used Notion, your life would be perfect. You'd be able to organize everything. You never forget anything again. No, that's not how it started. I don't think that's going to be how it works. If you can make that work for you, that's cool. We can talk about that later. But most likely, one singular tool is not going to work for you. Now, if you read the book, or if you've heard any of Forte's work, you're familiar with this idea of para. It's how he structures his files in projects, areas, resources, and archives. Now, this system is his second brain. Not his notes app, but this system, because he knows where everything is when it's organized by this system. If you read the book, he explains this very clearly, that not only is his notes app organized by para, but so is his computer desktop, and so is his files at work. Everything he has is organized by his second brain system, and therefore he knows how to find anything no matter where it is, because they're all organized accustomed to the same system. So, step 2. It's time for you to figure out what your system is going to be. And once you figure that out, what tools you're going to use. Let's assume for an instance you're going to be using para. That's really great to start out with because it's very simple, it makes a lot of sense, and it can easily be adapted to your needs. So now you're probably going to organize most of the tools that you run into on a daily basis to para, and that's a good thing. But you should also be aware that your second brain, because it's just not one tool, can have different extensions. For example, no matter what system I'm using at any given point, I always have my paper notebook in my pocket, because I write down any ideas or things I learn or information I need to remember in that notebook and not on my phone. Because I carry my notebook everywhere, I sometimes leave my phone at home. Or if I'm using a calendar, it's always the Apple Calendar on my computer. I don't really like paper calendars because it's hard to move things around, and I don't really trust the calendar in a third-party application because, maybe I don't want to use Obsidian for my calendar. I don't know why you would. So it works for me. It's an extension of my second brain, but it's not part of the same tool, and that's okay. Your second brain is going to be a system. It's going to tie all the things you use together. It's not one tool to rule them all. That is a mantra of companies that want to sell you their tool, not of people actually using that tool productively for everything that a second brain can and should be used for. So, you know what you want, you know what you need, you've done your research, you've built your system. What is step 3? It's the simplest, but also the hardest. To do glorious battle, as step 3 says, you need to stick with your tools for at least a month. Ideally more. It should be enough time to make you uncomfortable at the thought of locking yourself into that time. This is simply to force you to actually grow accustomed to the system and tools you've designed. It's all fine and dandy to build a nice system that looks nice and then decide that it's not working for you and you're going to try something else. But unless you actually stick to any system, every system will face some level of resistance. You're going to get friction no matter what you do. The best system is the one that you push through and you design or adapt to work for you through those hard times, because then you're going to actually start relying on it. If you just try to design something that feels good from the get-go, maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you'll design the perfect system and never have any problems with it, but most likely you will run into problems with your system. So first, figure out what you need your second brain to do and go look for things that fulfill those criteria. Then, figure out all of the different applications or tools in your second brain and establish how they will all interact with one another. And then finally, actually use the thing for at least a month, ideally more. And through those 3 steps, you should come away with a second brain that might not look beautiful. I'm not going to tell you it's going to look beautiful. What's going to be beautiful is how quickly you use it and how little you have to focus on it. It shouldn't be something that you have to do maintenance on every single day. That's great if you want it to be that, but what this outline is going to actually get you is a system that will work for you and function as your second brain that you can almost forget about and use seamlessly in your day-to-day life. That's the goal of the second brain. That's what this idea will get you. That's why just choosing one tool or one application won't work the same way as actually building a second brain will.